Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here to review The Beastmaster from 1982. So, I just obtained a brand new mic from yesterday. So, hopefully, the audio quality is to be same, if not a thing that is to be sounding like a thing. So, let's go on. Let's talk about The Beastmaster. I go on and I see a character that is to be, even unborn, a baby in a womb, to be a threat to our main villain character, to need to figure out how to, like, man, I gotta wipe this threat out, even in the womb. Like, man, I'm just so scared of him. So that is to go out and kind of be quasi funny to me within this film. We would have a film that, to me, is to remind me of stuff like the Supergirl original film. We come to find that in the Supergirl film, like, they do this long stretch of origin, and then when they have her really get into her powers, it's a lot of flying around. And then eventually there's threats presented where she's to face off against them and beat them in only the way of which that she is to be able to know how. Dar is to also remind me of Conan the Barbarian. We come to find that Dar tends to go on and do this, like, sword twirling thing. And Conan would go on and do this, like, brief sword twirling thing and then set it up to be like, okay, let's go, let's battle. Where Dar goes on and just has his default thing to be that sword twirling thing. Like, when he's not doing anything, he's going on and doing the sword twirling thing. Even in midst battle, he's still going ham on that. It's like a video game player who is to go on and find a button that he likes and only presses that because it's so convenient to press that button more so than anything else. And it's just like, that's the Beastmaster for you. So, the Beastmaster film is also, within its estranged approach of attires of basically next to nothing. Like, we go on to find characters like Seth that are basically wearing an outfit made out of belts, what looks like. We'd also be, like, surprised at some points in this movie, good, bad, and what have you, but, like, I was surprised about there actually being topless scenes in this film for some absurd reason. Yeah, like, we'd realize that probably this movie is being rated R. There is some really dark directions that they take with this film that does make sense for why they did certain things. Like, there's children to go on and be sacrificed. There are people that are to be impaled via the chest, to be just kind of held on a spike. There is to also be these topless scenes, and I'll go on and I'll mention it. So, there is at one point where this town is getting slaughtered and ransacked and what have you, and these men are ripping away this woman's top, and then she's running around topless, and I'm like, okay, all right, like, so, random topless scene. But then ultimately we also have Kyrie, our main female character, if I'm pronouncing that name right. Kyrie is going on with another slave woman, making her way to this pond or this lake or this body of water. And they're touching themselves to kind of just put water upon themselves to kind of bathe them. But feasibly, also, Kyrie goes further into the water, showing off her goods, or her glory of body. And then eventually Dar's off in the distance going, yeah, I gotta figure out how to I gotta figure out how to get this woman over here and trick her, and because I want me some of that. I wanna be able to have a smooching. I want to be able to go on and tell this girl of my interest of her, and and so on and so forth with Dar. So, because that's in my mind how Dar sounds. So, also, like, the key thing coming out of this is obviously the ferret stuff, like the Kodo and Podo. I think a lot of people are to really like those characters, and then eventually realize just how random the animals really are in this film. That are to just be like, really? Like, all you have is just Kodo and Podo, and just this tiger that also looks like a Black Panther, and you have a hawk, and that's about it? Like, you're not going on and having this character really rely on these random bits of trained animals. Like, you would think that the third act would have Dar do like a Tarzan warlike cry, because this character is basically a knockoff Tarzan or Aquaman. And you would think that Dar would be doing this war cry to be sending all these animals out of the woodwork or out of the woods or the jungle or what have you, to eventually face off against these human threats and then save the day. And that's how we wrap up this film. But no, Dar all of a sudden is to find some unlikely alliances with these winged devourer monstrous characters that I guess are to be very more animalistic than they are to be human. So feasibly, it seems that these characters are to align themselves with the winged devourers, not going on and killing Dar, but also giving him a little token for their interaction and saying, hey, if you ever need me, Chuck, here's this token. So, which a lot of that honestly was so just strange to me, where it's like, okay, why is this happening? There's so much about this movie that I just found to be just strange. There is some interesting things that they did with uh, certain characters, like the Death Guards, where it's just these characters who are to kind of be these berserkers that they've tortured and and become these threatening beings. But inevitably, it's like, okay, like, why go on and shuck them into this underground setting and just go on and keep them so dormant? Like, I guess because they're uncontrollable, I guess, is the real problem. But also, then why have these things alive? Like, why not kill them off? Because they're not going to be a good enough use to you. Like, they're basically a thing where it's like you have to open a door to try to figure out how to best, like, target them to whoever you need to get targeted to, as well as also they're going to kill your own people. Like, we obviously see that in the movie where, like, these monks or these priests are getting killed before trying to get to the Beastmaster, trying to get to Dar. So, let's go on and let's explain this movie. So, we have Dar that is to be this prophecy fulfilling womb of a child. And immediately I'm coming to mind of like Star Wars is also like Clash of Titans with this movie. Because eventually we have Dar that is to survive his own womb assassination. We have this witch that comes into this bedroom to transform or transfer this wombed baby into a calf, and then the witch goes on to take the calf and sacrifice it and then whip out this baby and try to murder it All while there is to be this farmer off in the distance hearing all of this going on, and he decides he wants to act. Try to go on and throw this weapon to save this baby, to eventually try and murder this witch to save this baby, and become a father himself and raise this child, because there is no one else there to figure out where this child really belongs to. So Dar and his dad grow up together and grow old, and then there is to be at a point where we have to completely wipe out Dar's town of which that he's living in, because all these people have kind of used up all their usefulness. So this town that is to have this rampaging June clan or group make their way through it and murder everybody is to eventually fill Dar's mind with revenge and rage and upsettedness. Ah! So, with Dar going on and having nothing left to do but to hope that he can take the Junes out, he goes on to then, in a very Conan the Barbarian-esque like way, because eventually Conan just lumps his way into finding these people and they partner up together. So this is kind of a same similar thing. Whereas the Beastmaster goes on and finds these people like Seth and Tal and eventually Kyrie, because we need a topless female in some point of this movie. As well as also an attractive woman that we're going like, this is delish. So Beastmaster goes on to eventually find kind of common ground of thought people that eventually lead him into facing off against Mayax, a guy who is so threatened by the Beastmaster he tries to kill him even in the womb. And he goes on to send lackeys and people that are to go on and obviously make a lot of mistakes. But also, Mayax isn't much of a threat by the end of this movie. Just thrust a knife into his gut and call it a day. But, like, Mayax does go on after he is to only be able to be threat enough to throw children into a fire to continue to try to go after Dar. But we have a ferret that takes him down, of all things. Wow, what a really very much easy character to go on and just get rid of. And so after that, we then go on and have Dar face off against the group that had killed his family or killed his town. And oh wow, the people that they've gone on to collect to fight with them have basically decided like, oh no, we're a little bit scared. We're not going to go out there and we're not going to help them. We're not going to go out there and we're not going to save these people from being outnumbered. No. Like, we're going to go on and just wait behind this cage and hope for the best. And luckily, the Beastmaster is to throw out this token to say, hey, I'm going to need some help in the third act. I need these weird, goofy, winged devourers to come back and assist me. Which, man, it's very convenient that these winged creatures had gone on to find where the Beastmaster was. Plus, also, after all this, the Beastmaster walks off to the sunset and is to be met by Kyrie, who's to want to go on and like, well, hey, like, like it seems that you were going on through this entire movie to figure out ways to have me, like, know that you're interested in me, but you're walking off now. Like, have you completely forgotten that I'm to go on and want to be with you? So they cement a kiss that is to wrap up this film. So the Beastmaster, I would go on and overall say that, like, the Beastmaster is kind of like fan-made level of modern film. This movie is to feel very cheap, and also is to feel like a film that isn't as relevant as it is now. It doesn't hold up, in my opinion, to so many other things. Like, I could point out so many other movies that are much more enticing via story and just overall approach of it, and is to have a similar like special ability to this character. Like, I would throw in stuff like even like the Kelvin Lutz Hercules film. I would throw in uh stuff that is to be like John Carter of Mars, that is to probably be more visually enticing, even though also it's somewhat of a bizarre like film that I think is just better than this movie uh in so many aspects. So there's just movies that are just more eventful and more fascinating to pull away from than the Beastmaster, having to sit through 2 hours of not enough going on. So, with that said, yeah, the Beastmaster is a film that I would write off to say that it's not actually a movie that I would lean into being positive about. Yeah, like, I would go on to say that it is a bad film, but it's a bad plus film, which means that, like, it's a movie that I would want to go on and say that it's like a soft bad. That it's a movie that I think that there could be maybe a redeeming quality of it. Um, at some point in the future, if I was to ever gone on and rewatch it and be like, you know what, like maybe this movie isn't that bad. Maybe I can find things about it that I can go on and lean more into the positive. But like, that's what the Beastmaster really is just a film that doesn't have enough of anything for anyone to really give a shit. So, with that said, the Beastmaster is to be bad, but it's also to be currently at the second this recording free on YouTube. So check that out there. Get your own opinions upon this film, and then eventually make your way into all these other projects that I've gone on to mention. So eventually you'll go on and watch a number of other things. I tend to try in every single review to mention other projects that are to maybe spark curiosity, if nothing more, as well as also try to eventually tell people that I know quite a bit about quite a bit of things. If that is to not be always obvious. But because some people just naturally assume that I don't do my homework. There is to have been a comment of a person that is to go on and state, oh yeah, like you don't know nothing about these characters. And like, yes, I do. Like, I did the YouTube videos of them, but I guess that's not good enough. If only you would go on and go into those videos and realize that I'd also given you websites to actually watch these pieces of content instead of having you go to a YouTube video where you're supposed to get just an intro of the character. You could have gone on and been watching actual episodes of these pieces. But whatever, like, I guess some people are to go on and just make the mistake of not looking up my videos or watching them, and that's on them. Um, Plus, also, there's some people that just want to go on and just want to come in here and just want to be negative towards me, or go on to just throw their 2 cents about some review of maybe I wasn't in detail enough about something, or maybe I wasn't to go on and be this or that about these things. And ultimately, I just say it's like, well, hey, like, there are so many times where I've seen a lot worse reviews. And I always say here that, yeah, like, I have always so much going on, or I have really, at certain points, there's certain reviews where I'm like, okay, this is going to be a nothing burger that probably no one is going to care about. But then when I would find out different, I'd be like, oh, okay, great. So this is worth me going on and worth me actually reviewing. Plus, on top of this, as soon as this review is over, I'm going to try as quickly as possible to review something else. Because I do know that WrestleMania Day 1 has been a thing done and over with, so I have to just rush as soon as this is over to then go on and cover that, which is really timelining exactly when I'm to go on and do this video. But regardless, it doesn't matter because eventually this video may be just a nothing burger. So, with that said, I'm gonna go on and pause this video here, get out my cast list because this is a live action thing, and get out anything of which that will seemingly be a completion of me to upload this video. But I'm going in for scene, blow for blow of this entire film, and maybe at some points having some commentary, but probably most of the time just trying to get through as much as I can of this movie to describe back to you this entire film of which that I had gone on to see the night before. So, with that said, I know that this part is to not be as interesting as any part of this video may have been to any number of you, and I thank you for going on and checking this video out. And hopefully at some point you'll go on and comment on any video and eventually give something positive instead of something negative. Because eventually I seem to always want to try as best as possible to be like, you know what, I'm happy right now. And I hope nothing is going to go on and F with that. Because in all honesty, like everything is just coming up Millhouse. Like I'm going on and I'm able to somehow get these shirts and these things to eventually help me with thumbnails because that is to go on and be my focus, my key thing to get a goal of like, man, if only I can go on and I can get these things to help me out with the thumbnail and what have you, even though to a good number of people, like who would care about a thumbnail? But I care about it. I like the challenge of it. I find it to be fun. And I'm getting these things either as a gift or also I'm getting these things for free on stuff like Timu, anyways. So why not go on and make the best of it to just be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go on and I'm going to get like a Resident Evil hoodie soon. That will hopefully go on and be something fun to wear for either some old thumbnails or also to be something fun to wear when I get into some new Resident Evil content, which I hope to still get into. Because I'm planning on doing Resident Evil Extinction soon. I had gone on to eventually find certain Power Ranger shirts for certain seasons, and it was kind of fun going on being able to, like, yeah, I can get these things because of how actually cheap they are. And like they were kind of gifted to me, but still, like I was like, great, so me having these things will finally just be like, okay, good, like I can feel um like accomplished in like feeling that when I come into these thumbnails, like I have like an item instead of having to just be very creative with my mind of like, okay, I have nothing for this. I have nothing for, like, what am I going to do for the thumbnail? I'm just to go on and look stupid in every one of these anyways, like a clown. But if anyways, like, I'm to go on and try to put my best foot forward. So, because there's only so much in my closet that can cover every bit of every one of these movies. So, with that said, very much of a rant, but also, like, I want to try to always be like this positive person, uh, and eventually, if there is still negativity that happens, I'm just like, oh well. Like, Like, I want to be happy, so like I'm not letting anybody ruin that. But that also can just go on and just like attract people to try to, and like, why? Why not go on? Like, if anything, hopefully some people that may be negative or constructively negative, where it's like, yeah, I hated this movie also. Yeah, I thought the movie was blah 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 blah. And like that could be something we could just agree on, or maybe some person could disagree with what I say and be like, no, I like the Beastmaster, I enjoyed this film, blah blah blah, and explain why. And then I could be like, okay, yeah, I could see your point there. Like, I can see why you can enjoy this film. Maybe it's something you grew up on. Any number of people can grow up on anything. So, either way, I'm here to say, let's go on and let's pause this here because it is spoiler time, spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this movie. Let me know in the comments below what is to be your favorite sword and sorcery like films, because eventually at some point I may go on and I may cover those. Any of the movies of which that I've said here, like Clash of Titans or maybe more Conan the Barbarian like films, or anything in between of which that is to maybe be like a Red Sonja or something like that, may all but be certain things that I may eventually decide to cover within the future. So if you have any interest in them, let me know in the comments below. Because eventually I am to go on and try to find all these unusual projects and contents and what have you to eventually be a part upon the channel, and not every single one of them are all going to be home runs. A lot of them are going to go on and be these projects that I just have fun doing, regardless of how well they turn out. But either way, like, I'm to go on and just be like, man, like, some stuff just hits. I don't know why it does, but it does. So I'm to be forever grateful that that happens. But let's go on and let's get to the point here. Alrighty, so the beginning of this movie begins at a gate. We come to find that this gate is to be opened, and we have Mayax and his priests making his way through this town, and then making their way into this temple and this underground area where we have a number of witches all around this cauldron, eventually going on and looking at the king's wife, who is sleeping within this bed. The witches are to all go on and tell Mayax that this woman's womb of unborn son is to eventually become a threat to Mayax, to where, of course, then in turn, Mayax is like, well, like, if this child is to be a threat to me, then we should go then and kill it within the womb before it ever becomes a thing. So we then have the King Zed himself that is to make his way to Mayax and to have heard around town that it seems Mayax is quite interested in doing some child sacrifice. And Mayax is to go on and say, it's like, well, yeah, like, I'm going on and I'm going to kill an unborn son. And the king is to say, well, like, I am to go on and to not be pleased by that. So I will go on and I will banish you from this town for life. So Mayax is to be taken by Tal and Seth to go on to horseback. As Mayax makes his way out of town, Mayax is to then notice there is this witch that's off in the distance, eventually collecting a thing of cattle to make her way to uh, the king's son's womb's wife of bed. So let me reiterate that. So the witch is making her way to this bedroom of the king's wife that is with child, to go on and assassinate the child within the womb. Okay, so as we go on and have this witch that is sneaking into this bedroom, eventually the witch is to have this estranged pouring device that has this somewhat purplish blue liquid that is to pour over the neck of this woman. Going on when this woman is to awaken, paralyze her, as well as also the king that is resting next to his wife is to also have this same liquid poured upon his neck, to eventually, when they awake, they both be paralyzed, and there's nothing they could do to stop this witch from going on and transferring this woman's unborn child from the womb to this cattle, and then leaving with the cattle, or with the cow of sorts. So we then cut. Also, like, man, when looking at this witch, there is really at one point where, like, we're really seeing this witch's, like, rack. And I'm just like, man, like, this witch is looks so freaking ugly, but man, does she have, like, a massive chest. Which is just kind of like that, the weird complication of, like I guess, like, Butterface. But if anything, like, if you guys don't know that whole joke of a thing where it's like, man, this girl has a rockin' body, but her face though. And so I guess that is to really just be what this witch really is. So the witch is to go on and make her way to a fireplace with baby after cutting through this cow. So as this witch is to go on and mark this child with the hand, and this farmer is to have this lantern to be like, hey, what's going on? I got nothing better to do to, like, try and have this horse or donkey with me and just make my way through this area conveniently at the right place, right time, to stop this witch from going on and murdering this baby. Here's the kind of the strange thing. So why would this woman need to take the time to brand this baby if she was going to go on and kill it anyways? That doesn't exactly make a lot of sense to me. Like, that seems just like an extra thing that you don't really need to do if you're going to murder this baby anyways. But so, as the farmer is to hear the cry of a baby, he is to want to go on and save the baby and eventually raise it as his own. But the farmer goes on and sees that this woman is raising a dagger to this child, so he thrusts open this weapon called a cater, or I think they pronounce it differently in the film, but I'm just going to call it a cater. This weapon is to be put out as this almost like boomerang flinging of a weapon, and eventually the farmer is to launch this thing and then have the robes of an almost like Star Wars approach, because this movie is kind of Star Wars anyways. The robe of this witch ends up falling down. The farmer, because, like, this guy is to be Dar's father, but he doesn't actually have a name, so I'm just calling him Farmer or Father or whatever, because that's all I can think of here. So the farmer is to look over the clothing of this witch to then be surprised as the witch is to come from behind him. Eventually, as they fight, we will go on to eventually have Father become the victor. I believe he ends up thrusting her into the fire and killing her that way. eventually leading to this big explosion. So Farmer goes on to eventually find Child and picks him up and is to travel back to his town. Eventually, in an almost Lion King like way, we have the father that lifts the child above his head and it's like, yeah, I have a child now. Whoop de doo. All right, I found this random child I can raise. So now we cut to Dar becoming much more of a young boy. As both father and son are kind of playing around here, eventually father does go on and hand Dar this cater as he chucks it and it goes on and almost misses a guy's head and eventually has this cloth that is to be stuck upon this tree, and they're to have a bit of a laugh and they're like, hey, maybe we should go on and maybe we should just kind of run off because like we kind of made a bit of mischief here. But then also we'd come to find a guy known as Tease that will get murdered by a bear, as this bear is seemingly very hungry. So he goes on and devours this man. And then eventually, as Dar and his father try to run away, Dar's father falls and's like, oh, my leg, my leg. So Dar goes on and is to realize that he does not want to leave his father. And so the only thing that Dar is left to do is to get between his father and the bear. So Dar goes on and makes his way to this bear. And then eventually it seems he is to go on and use his telepathy power to have this bear just kind of walk away. There is not exactly an understanding of that Dar is to have these superpowers. Like, it just seems to be that, like, the bear is to walk off. I'm like, okay. All right, so the bear was just not interested. He had gotten his fill of meat that day. So Dar makes his way back to his father and kind of checks on him. And so the father is to tell Dar, hey, don't go on and don't tell anybody what happened here besides telling them that this guy Tease is dead. Because if anything, we have a moment here where the father ends up telling Dar, hey, yeah, like, you have a special gift that you need to figure out. And if it takes you the rest of your life to go on and do that, then, like, you deserve to go on and find out why it is you had gotten that ability. Very much like the Man of Steel, where Kevin Costner's character is telling Clark, like, hey, like, you need to figure out why you're to be this special. And if it takes you the rest of your life to figure that out, then that's what you need to do with your life. That's your life goal. So, but also, what makes Dar unique is this mark upon his hand, which is like, yeah, you need to figure out what this mark is. You need to figure out why you have this. So, Dar goes on and runs into town to eventually become a much older Dar. This is to go on and be now our character that is to be quite a person that is to be the kind of the character we see here. It also is rather interesting to see a very young version of Dar that has very dark brown hair. You would think it would be blonde, but no. Like, I guess they just couldn't find a kid that was to kind of match hairstyle-wise Dar's. But then also, I'm sure even the actor who plays Dar is to probably not have blonde hair either. Anyways, so Dar is to make his way from out of his home that seems to be kind of a, like, I would call it a tree house, but like, it's to not have a tree attached to it. It's to be a house that is to be looking above the world, and I thought that was to be so interesting. There seems to be a number of wooden, sturdy sticks that are kind of holding up these houses. So we'd have Dar that is to be sliding down this rope to eventually make his way through the town to meet up with his father to get this hoe to go on to their task of farming. Because, of course, this guy is a farmer. Star Wars. So, Dar goes on and makes his way with all these farmers, and eventually he meets up with this dog. Eventually, Dar is to kind of play around with it, but then eventually the dog is to lead Dar to realizing that there is trouble a coming. Dar goes on to eventually find out that there is a horde of June making their way to his town to eventually slaughter everyone be put in place within it. Dar goes on to make everybody aware, hey, yeah, trouble afoot. Let's run to the town to try and save them. So we come to find that Dar's father is to get this cup of drink and drinks it, then comes to find the June making their way to town. Uh, Dar's father is to take out this sword, is to draw a line into the ground, and is to just kind of prepare himself for the battle that is coming. But inevitably, Dar's father is to be trampled by these horses and killed that way, as Dar is running with a number of other farmers to try to get back to town. Now we see the chaos, the carnage, and the people getting killed. We come to find these women are getting slaughtered. One person is to have gotten their shirt ripped or their top ripped to eventually reveal topless running woman. So we also go on and see a guy with a flamed mace that is to obviously make the mistake of be chucking this. And I'm gonna be like, shouldn't they have edited that out? That just looks stupid. That just has the guy just look dumb. But really, I guess we have to go on and just have something be filmed here, and that was it, I guess. So we then go on and see the town trying to put their best foot forward to try to face off against these June and defeat some of them. We have kind of like the numbers game, have people to be killed by the June, or they end up getting ropes to put a place of Junes that are on horseback and eventually get hit by the rope and get knocked over. So, as finally Dar makes his way into the city, he's to go on and find so many people dead. Dar tries to go on and face off against some of the June, even taking a shield and thrusting it over one of the June's body and thrusting this arrow trying to kill one of them. But then eventually one of the June spots the Beastmaster and knocks him out, eventually leaving then Dar to be dragged away by his dog. Eventually, I was to go on and be like, you know what? I think the dog does legitimately have some name, of which that honestly escapes me now. But the name does sound similar to like Kodo and Podo's name, but for the life of me, I can't think of what the actual name was. Maybe it was Dodo or something. But you guys can go on, correct me in the comments below if you were to go on and find this character's name, and to put it in the comments. So that way it helps out the comments section. So, but either way, it's a dog, it's a wolf, it's an animal that is going to be helping and assisting Dar here. So, as Dar gets dragged away, there's to be a random person that comes flying out of one of these towering homes, and here's where we find these priests and Miax making his way into looking on at the carnage of this town. And so we cut to, eventually, in my mind, Dar, who is to have wakened from his knockout. As Dar is to wake up, he is to see through the eyes of the hawk, and then eventually spot that his dog is now dead. He had taken an arrow to him via one of these crossbowish Junes, and as Dar makes his way into the town, we are to spot his hawk. So Dar makes his way back into his town to find his people impaled. They're to be kind of thrusted into the chest of these stakes, and all to be looking in a very visceral way of just like, man, yeah, like they had really gone on and done the real effort to to make sure these people are dead, and giving us an interesting visual here. So Dar goes on and stacks all the dead bodies and takes his dog and plops it next to his father, and then looks at the mark of his hand and gathers his sword and all his items to eventually light a flame to all the dead bodies and to walk off, as a Viking's funeral is to be done with all these bodies, to have this ceremony, as the hawk is now flying around. So Dar ends up finding this big log and is to be taking it and is to be kind of like thrusting it around so that way he can build up his strength. And then Dar is to go on and ultimately realize, oh, I have a sword. Oh, I completely forgot about this. So then Dar takes then the sword out and starts whipping that around too, because we just have to have more things for Dar to do here. So as Dar runs his way through this water that is evidently really shallow, Dar eventually comes to find both Kodo and both Podo. They steal his loincloth and they run away with it. Dar chases after. Dar then comes to find, as he's trying to get to Kodo and Podo, that he is to eventually end up in quicksand for his troubles. Because eventually he stumbles upon this rock, this large, huge rock, and then makes his way right into quicksand. Dar is looking on, and Kodo and Podo on top of this tree, like, hey, would you mind helping me out? How about a little help here? So Kodo and Podo are just staring like, well, like you're basically effed. So Dar decides to use his telepathy, his power, to then have Kodo and Podo, with their teeth, chomp through the branches of this tree to inevitably have the branches come down to Dar to where he can grab onto them and then free himself from the quicksand. Inevitably, there is to be one of the ferrets that I believe is maybe Kodo. That is to also fall into the quicksand, and because of the kindness that had been bestowed upon him by these ferrets, Dar is to then go on and be like, okay, like I want to save this ferret because he was very helpful to me, as well as also I want to name him. So yes, we find out that this ferret is none other than Kodo, and eventually looking at the other ferret, it's like, I'll name you Podo. So now we have to show as Doris be walking off, that the ferrets are now in this sack that he is to go on and have. And we consistently see Kodo and Poto being like put in and out of this whole sack thing, and they're kind of like looking on and what have you. And so Dar goes on and is to again notice this hawk flying around, and also notice that there are to be villains nearby that are kind of causing chaos. So, and I believe these characters are to be Junes or Marauders or what have you. So, Dar whips out Kodo and Poto and says, "Hey, we're gonna go on and we're gonna help these people, or we're gonna help this person." So Dar goes on and is to eventually make his way to one of the men, and is to start beating them down. And then eventually we come to find that one of the other Junes is to have this crossbow out, and we have Dar that calls out to his hawk. His hawk goes on, grabs the June character, and kind of gets him off this horse and gets him away from his weapon. Eventually, we have the ferrets going on and taking away the crossbows of these guys' weapons that are on the ground. And when they try to run to get to it, we would have eventually Beastmaster to meet them to try and beat them down and take them out. So we then would have a character known as Rue, which is to be this black tiger. Like, I was quasi confused of what exactly, like, I would assume that this would have been a tiger, but ultimately I was also just kind of questioning, like, Black Panther, normal tiger, like, what exactly is to have this to be fallen? For the coat of this tiger is just confusing to me. So, as Rue is to go on and align himself with Dar to kind of help him out here and attack some of these guys, we eventually have Dar that's like, all right, well, I'm going to go on and I'm going to name you Rue. And so Dar comes to realize as he's gathered his animals together, like, okay, like, the hawk is to be my eyes, the ferrets are to be my cunning, and now, with Rue, I have my strength. So, here's where Dar runs off to further discover now women. So, ultimately, I probably have to make the kind of error here that with that whole scene that I just got on to mention, I don't know what exactly led if the Marauders or the bad guys were going on and having a person with them, or really if they were just left to their own selves. I just don't remember that scene exactly. So, like, I was trying to put the pieces together of what that scene really was, but either way, it's to the point of me just going on and being like, okay, so Dar is going on and killing those June characters. I made a mistake about how that was to lead to that point, because eventually I just saw this movie last night. But anyways, so let's cut past this. So Dar is to go on with his ferrets on his shoulders to notice Kyrie, and Kyrie is to go on to be bathing, and then eventually is to find that her clothing is to have been taken from her, and to have these ferrets run off with it because Dara's like, hey, the same thing that you did to me, I want you to do to her, so I can trick her into eventually a kiss because I find this woman attractive. So Kyrie is to inevitably go on and fall for this trick and have her clothes be run off with her. And so she races off with it and stumbles onto Rue. Of course, Kyrie is to be afraid of this tiger, and the Beastmaster is to come from behind her and say, "Be quiet, this beast is fairly fierce." So, Dar is to say, if we show no fear, we may escape. So, funny enough, Dar is to try to go on and supposedly scare off this animal to have it go running away, and then Dar is to win over this woman. The problem with this is Tar goes on, makes his way to Rue, and is to try to scare it away, but Rue is like, dude, I don't give a fuck. Like you have the woman now. Like, I'm just gonna sit down and just chillax and just be like, like, all right, my job is over. But Dara's like, hey, run away now so I can look good in front of this woman, so I can have her kiss me and I can be as close to intimate as I possibly can with this woman, even though ultimately it's just them kind of rolling it through the grass. So eventually, Rue does walk away, just slowly but surely. And then Dara's like, aha, I saved you from this beast. So Dara's going on and asking Kyrie for what reward that she's willing to give him. And the two of them kiss. And inevitably, this leads to then Beastmaster looking at Rue, and Rue is like, hey, over here, you know the guy that just helped you? Like, so Kyrie is somewhat upset for the Beastmaster going on and assuming that this woman is just be there to eventually be a one to kiss and be intimate with. So there's to be a rolling of the ground, and eventually Dar is to explain to Kyrie that he is no threat to her, and Kyrie is to ask who sent you. So Dar is to mention about how his town being wiped out is to lead him on a journey to face off against the June Horde. And he is to swear his revenge, and he is to be all alone. So eventually, Dar is to get the upper hand here, is to be rolling over on top of Kyrie, and is to ask who exactly she is. So Kyrie is to go on and mention about how she is to be a slave. And eventually, while this is going on, all of a sudden her necklace is to come off of her body and fall to the ground. Eventually, Dar is to have collected this necklace and eventually takes it with him to eventually have both Tal and both Seth see necklace and be like, wait a minute, like, where did you get this? This is not a necklace you can easily obtain. Where did you find this? And immediately there is an assumption that the Beastmaster to Seth and Tal are to possibly be their enemy. But he's like, no, 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 you just don't understand. So Dar is to also look at the back of this woman to find out that she has whipping marks on her. To really cement that, yes, she is a slave. So Kyrie is to mention to Dar how that she will go on and become a slave that is to be put to death soon. And Dar is hoping that if he can go with this woman, maybe there's some way he can save her. And eventually, Kyrie is to say her goodbyes and to walk away from Dar. Because Dar has nothing but himself. Like, what much of a threat could he be against Mayax? So Dar goes on and thrusts out the ferrets and is to talk to them and like, yeah, we should go on and we should follow her. So eventually, as Dar is to make his way into this town and inevitably temple, he goes on to find a man stuck in a cage that will lead him to these winged devourers. So, oddly enough, Dar goes on and frees this guy from the cage to have him just be consumed by one of the winged devourers. As well as also, Dar is to look into this kettle and seemingly taste it to find that there is a head within it. So Dar goes on to just kind of be watching his back here as these winged devourers start to surround him. Dar eventually is to call upon his hawk because he sees this massive statue of a hawk or bird. And so when the hawk comes, eventually the winged creatures are like, oh, this guy speaks animal. This guy is to be a friend of animals. Well, hey, we like this guy, so we're gonna just go on and hand him this chunk of medallion that says, hey, if you ever need some assistance, we'd be happy to align ourselves with you to go on and fight alongside you. So, because again, this is to be a guy that has aligned himself with animals. So, we cut to then Dar, who's sleeping, and eventually the ferrets are to be like around his neck, like, hey, yeah, wake up. So, Dar goes on to look at his bird metal piece medallion and then starts making his way on his pilgrimage, his walk. Eventually going on and making his way into this town that has this pyramid-esque like temple, and further going on to make his way to this gate that has this bridge over it that is to have this moat. Dar goes on and chucks this rock from off of this bridge to eventually fall into this tar. Like, oh, okay, this is going to be something that is going to be kind of a foreshadow moment, which eventually will play into the tar at some point later in this film. So, Dar makes his way into this town to eventually find this random bit of cloth to cloak himself. So, strangely enough, I guess everybody is to go on in this town and know that this guy's the Beastmaster, so he has to kind of disguise himself. Strangely, I just don't know why. So, Dar makes his way to the pyramid ash-like temple to come to find Mayak sacrificing a child. Weirdly enough, Dar doesn't take the time to save this child, but then when a second child is to be sacrificed, all of a sudden Dar is then, hey, we need to act. So, which is convenient because eventually this child will eventually be a character known as Sako. Strange name, but regardless. Eventually, Dar will find Sako to align himself together with him, and eventually he will become a helping character also. With going on and having this horse and buggy that will lend to Dar getting around at some points, or escaping certain areas. So yeah, after the first sacrifice of a child, we then go on and have these priests that are to go on and rip away this daughter away from Sako to eventually to be hoisted above this pyramid to also get sacrificed. Dar then goes on and is to take his hawk and say, hey, yeah, go on and grab that kid to save this child from murder. So, or from death or sacrifice. So, the bird flies off with the kid, and then we ultimately, sometime later, or we ultimately see that Dar is not to bow down to Mayax, and we then have Mayax that does this, like, well, yeah, like, can't you see that R has spoken and wants your child to be sacrificed? And like, this line just makes no sense. Uh, R wants your children. I'm like, what? What is this line? I have no idea what was meant here to say. So we now cut to Dar that has an unusual sack upon his body. This sack will eventually be of child and will be revealed to Sako. It's like, hey, here's your daughter back to you. Sako is to be eternally grateful and is like, hey, let me give you a meal, at least to show you my appreciation of having you return my child back to me. So Sako is to also make Dara aware of what's going on in this town, as of course Dara is to be caught oblivious. So Sako is to explain about the king and how he had lost this son. It had disappeared so ago. And how at this point we now have Mayax who's having ultimate power. He's to basically be the king of this town because the king has gone on to also disappear himself. We'll come to find that the king is to have been left in some imprisonment and is to eventually be also blind. And eventually, once the king is to have gotten killed within this movie, it is all to be left for Tal to be the new king, besides Dar, who is to be the king, if not Tal, technically. So, even though, strangely enough, Dar was not to have been birthed by normal woman means, but by a cow. But still, I guess it counts. So, and I guess that probably does make sense about how Dar is to have the abilities of which that he has to speak to animals, because he was technically wombed from a cow. So I guess that does make sense of why he has these special abilities. It's like the Marvel character Blade, where he is to have had a father that was a vampire and a mother that was a human, and eventually they got to knock boots, and it made Daywalker. So Dar makes his way to leaving Sako, but will say, "Hey, yeah, I'll see you again." So now Mayax is with these monks or these priests and these witches, and he is to Mayax hand these priests this ring that has a eye within it, which is to be basically his way of seeing things through other people. So we now have Dar that is to again be making his way through these woods, and eventually does stumble upon these priests, and this ring opens and reveals this eye to be watching on Dar, as he is to of course go on and start sipping this water. Mayax is to realize that, yeah, it seems that this Dar fellow is to be a threat to me, and then there is the knowledge from these witches that this is to be Zed's son that is to need to be killed here, and so Mayax is like, well, yeah, of course, wipe him out. So Dar is to have had one of these priests take this rope and try and choke out Dar with this stick rope like thing, as if like this is kind of this choking device. So Dar goes on and takes this stick with this rope in it and grabs this guy and thrusts him overhead of him, and then goes on to eventually face off against these priests with the help of Rue, attacking certain other priests. So eventually, as the priests run off, Dar uses his sight from this hawk to find out where the rest of the priests are. So there is at one point where these priests are going on and trying to figure out how to take down the tiger, as the tiger falls into this hole, and there is to be a priest that takes out this crossbow to kill Rue, and then all of a sudden we come to find both Seth and both Tal that make their introductions here. Or we've kind of seen them briefly in the past, but if anything, not as prominent now. So one of these priests whip out this weapon, and Seth is to catch it with his stick. Eventually, we would go on to have Seth that is to be knocking off this priest into this hole, to then have this priest be forced to face off against this Rue, and of course he ends up getting mauled and killed here. So Dar goes on and meets up with Seth and Tao and feel that he's indebted with them for saving Rue. So Dar goes on and wants to free Rue from his hole. So he tries to lift this tree, this tree trunk that is to seemingly be just randomly there. So Dar tries to lift it, has struggles because I guess he's not that strong. He's not like Hercules strong or absurdly strong like a lot of these superhumans are. So Seth, Tal, and Dar, all three of them, go on to figure out ways to lift this tree trunk to eventually make it into the hole, to where then Rue can kind of claw and climb his way out. So as there are introductions to be done here by Seth and Tal to introduce who they are, eventually we would get to the point to where our characters are to be sifting through the stuff of the priests, as well as also at some point they are to find that Dar is to have this necklace that was from the slave girl, and eventually Seth is to go on and be like, hey, you need to explain yourself. Why do you have this necklace? And so Dar goes on to explain it, and eventually mentions, hey, I just found this from a slave girl. And Seth is like, hey, this is no slave girl necklace. We also find that Tal is to find the eyeball ring that he doesn't know it's an eyeball ring and puts it on his person. So Dar is to explain about the whole slave girl situation, and Seth is to be like, well, okay then, will we leave at dawn? So Dar makes his way to his hawk to eventually see through his eyes of the hawk as the hawk flies around. We have Tal and we have Seth that are talking here, and And so we push on to then by daybreak, having Dar find these priests. Seth ends up asking him how these people are dressed to figure out who they are and who is with them. And it's the women that are to go on and be sacrificed. So it's like, okay, we need to go on and we need to save Kyrie, but also there's quite a bit of these priest guys around them. We're kind of outnumbered. So Seth has to mention how there's much planning to do to figure out how to beat these priests. So inevitably what happens here, as these priests and slave women are to make their way to this seemingly boat, we come to find that the guys that are going on and to be having this rope system to get this boat from place to place, we'd come to find out that none other than Dar and his men are to be on this boat to eventually plan their attack here. So Seth goes on and he starts to attack the priests, whipping his stick out and going on to just start to kind of catch these people off guard, if nothing else. Dar whips out his sword and starts to attack the priests also. Inevitably, Rue is to also get into the fight and start mauling down some priests also. And then Dar is to say to Kyrie, hey, be quiet, this beast is fierce. And the two of them both laugh at like a callback to earlier before. So having Beastmaster go on and say now, it's like, yeah, this beast isn't going to hurt you because he's an ally with me. So the further and further they rope up these priests, they come to find out that there is more of them making their way there. So they're taking this boat now to try and separate themselves from the priests as they're trying to grab this rope to continue to pull. The further and further they're quicker to try to get to this boat to pull this rope, they realize that like these priests are to have these crossbows, and if anything, they may die if they don't get this boat pulled with rope quick enough. So we would find that the priests are to have oddly been tied up onto this boat, which makes no sense. But then further, we would have Seth that is just like, hey, lighten the load of this boat because we're not going to be able to get to move this boat fast enough. Kyrie sees the priests and she knocks them all out of the boat to eventually leave us to then have the boat being able to be left into the water quite faster to have some distance away from these priests. So Dar also cuts the rope, flings it, and then is to have our people be put in their merry way of like, hey, yeah, like we got away from you. So as the good guys just kind of laugh away the villains. So we now have Tal that is to go on and ask Dar, hey, will you come with us on our quest to help us out? And Dar finds out that Tal is to be related to Kyrie. She is to be his cousin. So Dar is like, hey, go and ask that woman to ask me. So Tal goes on, makes his way to Kyrie, and Kyrie's like, okay, I'll ask him. So of course, like, he'll want to go on and agree if I ask him to do this. So Kyrie is like, so will you help us? And Dara's like, you know what, I'm busy. Like, I have things on my schedule. Like, like I really want to go on and I really have so many adventures and so many other things that I'm kind of busy with. But so inevitably, Kyrie is to kiss Dar, and then Dara's like, okay, like I'm willing to kind of move things around, move my schedule, and help you in any way. So, as well as also Seth and Tal kind of back and forthing, like, hey, do you think he's gonna help us? Yeah, of course he's probably gonna help us. What better does he have to do? So we have Seth that is to leave both Tal and Kyrie because he's going to go on and find people to align himself, some warriors and people to inevitably fight with them. So Seth is to just leave here and eventually walk off in the sunset. So now we have Sako that is to have this hawk meet with him, and Sako's like, really? Like, me of all people needing to help you? Like, can't you just go on and just pretend that I'm not really there? So, or pretend that you missed me. So Sako goes on in horse and buggy and has Dar, Kyrie, and Tal hidden into this. It's kind of like the Trojan horse of attacks. So, but here's the thing: since Tal now has this eyeball ring, we would come to find that Mayax is watching this ring and realizing, like, oh, like I can go on and I could see uh, where these heroes are, and I can follow them, and I can know that they're coming to get me. So we can spring a trap for these would be heroes because I know better. And so Max is like, well, yeah, we'll definitively welcome these people into the temple, and uh, and we'll have these death guards there and waiting. So Dar, Kyrie, and Tal make their way into the temple, and Sako goes on to tell him, hey, I'll be over on the north side to eventually recollect you. So Rue is also within the bit of uh, horse and buggy there, and Rue follows the rest of the people here. So Dar goes on to make his way through this long hallway that has these openings or these kind of caged sides. So further as Dar walks through this hallway, he notices that these openings seem to have eyes be peeking out of it. Then further realizes that these hands are ripping out of these openings and trying to get to the Beastmaster. So Dar is to say to both Kyrie and both Tal, hey, don't go any further. So Tal goes on to find this chain above him, and so he grabs the chain and starts thrusting his way to avoid being grabbed by these death guards. And so Dar notices that there is this lever that he can push to inevitably seal these little caged windows to eventually have Kyrie and Tal like, okay, now it's safe. So as Dar, Kyrie, and Tal make their way through what looks like almost an underground prison. Inevitably, they make their way through what looks like these sewers, but every one of them are to lead into some cell. So they come to find that one of these sewer lid openings is to inevitably show them one of these death guards that are to be becoming a death guard. So Tal is to know what this is, and so he explains it. We'd come to find that these people are to be tortured so much so, driven crazed, to eventually become a death guard that is to be this berserker-like character that all they know is destruction and carnage and what have you. So they go on and they torture these characters to no end to eventually have them be these kind of mindless, monsterish characters that they can use at any whim. So within this area of which that the Death Guard is to be created, we'd come to find that Dar is to notice these keys, and it's like, hey, we need to go on, we need to get these keys. So the Beastmaster looks at Tal, it's like, hey, give me my sack so I can get out my ferrets, and I could use this rope to eventually kind of rope the ferrets down. The ferrets end up getting noticed by these priests, and inevitably, here's where the chaos starts. So, the ferrets do get the keys, but ultimately also, the Death Guard gets free and starts attacking the priests and goes on such a rampage, even going on and cutting through the rope of the ferrets to where the ferrets are now free to have to go on and re-find Dar again. And Dar goes on and tries to pull back the rope to realize, like, oh, the ferrets aren't on this rope now. So, while ultimately also this is going on, Kyrie finds this hidden passage and is to go on and seemingly change her attire, having to then have Dar go on and be like, hey, why is she dressed like that? So, Kyrie is to explain to both Tal and Dar where they need to go, and inevitably this is to lead them to having Dar be attacked by a monk or by a priest, and eventually Rue is to come in and then attack this priest. So they would come to find a cell that is to then house the king. They go on and they look at the tattoo of this man who is very much aged, but that is to be the tattoo connection. Like, oh yeah, this is the king because tattoo. So Dar looks at the king and finds him blind, so he puts this cloth over his eyes. They try to wake this guy hoping that he's still alive, or is it be some kind of conscious man that could speak. So as Kyrie starts to talk to this guy, eventually he's like, oh yes, all right. So inevitably, Mayax and this witch are to find Dar within the cell, and they close the door on them. All of a sudden, Mayax and the witch is to come to find that Rue is to be making its way close to them. So Mayax and the witch are forced to get into this cell with Dar and whoever to protect themselves. So The witch goes on and tries to fight Dar. The witch goes on to eventually blind Dar, and so now Dar cannot see. The witch takes her body in an almost Spider-Man-esque like way and starts crawling onto the ceiling to eventually, I guess, go on by the time she hits the ceiling to eventually jump on Dar and try to kill him. While also Mayax is to be having Tal with a knife at the throat to eventually have Kyrie be like, oh, okay, well, what do I do here? So, Rue is to have jumped upon this cell door, and Rue can technically see through this little gap of door somewhat what's going on. So Dar then goes on to conveniently know that Rue can see what's going on, and so Dar is to be seeing through Rue's eyes, and Dar then goes on to figure out where the witch is, takes his sword, and stabs into her to kill her. Very interesting of ways of which to kind of play into Dar being able to, through other animals, being able to see. So, after the witch is to then go on and be killed here, Rue is to then make its way to Mayax after thrusting through this door, and Mayax is to run away in fear. So now the king needs to get out of this cell. So Dar ends up asking the king, hey, can you walk? And the king says yes. So they start to make their way through these tunnels, through this underground area, and there seems to be this death guard that is thrusting its way through these hallways also, trying to get to these ferrets, busting through these pipes, having these ferrets try to escape this death guard as he thrusts through all these doors, creating more chaos. So the Beastmaster and his people go on to find there is to be this levered skull that has this rope onto it that could be raised and then have these people make their way through this stairwell to get out of here. Dar inevitably cannot leave because he still has to wait for his ferrets. Interestingly enough, they were trying to get to those keys, the ferrets, but when they go on and when they hand these keys over to Dar, Dar is like, yeah, a little late. Because if anything, they were lucky with the fact that they can just go in to these cells, open these doors, and get to these places without having to need this key. They just got lucky. So, as Dar waits for his ferrets, Dar finds out that Kyrie could not leave Dar. And as these priests make their way to Dar's door, eventually the priests are to be met by this death guard that is killing just anything that it finds. So the ferrets make their way through the gap of this door underneath it and make their way to Dar, and Dar is like, okay, well, you have these keys, but too late now. So Dar and Kyrie make this plan to, like, well, hey, like, there is to be this air shaft, this hole here that we can kind of just pipingly just kind of make our way out of here, so let's do that. After that is to go on and happen, the Death Guard is to be busting its way through this door to then follow both Dar and Kyrie. Kyrie was to have gone on before leaving to make her way through this air shaft. She was to have gone on and collected this thing of rope, which immediately when I watched this back, I was going like, well, hey, where did she get the rope from? And then I saw that she was to have grabbed it before going into the air shaft. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, like that made sense to me. I was like, where did that rope come from? So Kyrie puts down the rope, and they start to rope their way down. The Death Guard makes it ever so much more closer and closer to both Dar and Kyrie, and then has his kind of gauntlets or his gloves eventually try and cut away at this rope. Dar cries out for his hawk to eventually save him. The hawk comes flying in, grabs the Death Guard, and they go flying off. Um, Inevitably, the rope does break as Dar is telling Kyrie, hey, we need to go on and we need to slide down faster. But inevitably, the rope breaks conveniently to eventually have our two characters, both Dar and Kyrie, to land upon this horse and buggy for Sako to be like, yeah, I told you I was gonna be at the north. So as Sako goes on and eventually pauses his horse and buggy here, we then have Dar that goes on and takes his hawk, realizing that they need to get out of this gated area. And so Dar goes on to take the ferrets, rope them, and then attach them onto the hawk. So the hawk goes flying off to eventually open up this gate. As they're doing that, we'd come to find that these death guards are making their way through this town to get to Sako and the people. So Dar is hoping that Kodo and Poto will figure out how to eventually open this gate. So he's kind of relying on them. So we'd come to find that one of the guards notices that the ferrets are kind of gnawing on this rope, and he almost is to take them and then cut them. But by that time happens, there is all of a sudden to be the I think the hawk comes flying in to assist uh here, and then the guard ends up cutting the rope anyways to have this gate go up. So as the horse and buggy is now on its way to getting out of here, Dar goes on and cuts the other rope, and eventually has the death guards uh, being slammed with this gate on the ground via their chests and kind of crushed here. So we then have the king that is with Seth and all these followers. The king is going on and spouting how he wants his revenge, and Dar is like, you know what, it's all good and great that you want to go on and you want to go after Mayax, but if anything, it's not the right thing to do. Like, if anything, like, you need an army, and also, yeah, like, this is like to do this is just not the right thing. We have the king that is going on and asking, like, who is this man who is talking? And so Seth is like, well, he's the man that speaks to animals. He's to be a guy that has saved you. And the king is like, well, this guy's a bit of a freak, so like, I will not go on and align myself with him, even though really, like, Dar is to also be his son, of which that he's oblivious of. So Dar walks off to eventually like, okay, if you don't want my help, then I'll go on and I'll just do this to be left back on my own. So Dar is to cry, we see a tear in his eye, and Kyrie is to talk to Dar, mentioning about how she can't leave her people, but it seems that she is to be attractive to Dar. Kyrie is to mention how impossible things are, and how the king is to kind of have to be set in his ways and doesn't want Dar to be aligned with them, and eventually this king will get killed anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So Kyrie makes her way back to her people, and Seth and the king are to break down the exact plans of what the king wants to do within the following day. The whole time these plans are to be put out, we come to find that the ring that has the eyeball in it is to have been opened and is overhearing everything that the king is saying. Mayax with these witches are going on looking over uh this this pot of water to inevitably being like, ah, that's their plan. All right, well, like we'll go on and we'll just be aware of it and we'll set a trap. So Seth goes on and finally is to notice this eyeball coming from this ring and gets ever so close to it. Then finds this stick within this fire, pushes the stick into the eyeball of the ring, and then a witch is to cry out in agony. And then Seth is to explain to the king, hey, yeah, like, I think that Miax is to know everything that we've planned. So, but they go with the plan regardless. So, the following day, Dar is to be with Rue and kind of gets his stuff together and starts to walk off here. Eventually to be met by Sako, who's to go on and explain to the Beastmaster, yeah, the king had failed. His mission to try to save the city had gone on to, of course, fail. That Mayax had been aware of the king's plan and eventually had gone on to take Seth, Tal, Kyrie, and I believe the king to go on and inevitably to be sacrificed in front of the town to make examples of them. So Dar runs off into the city to make his way to the pyramid to inevitably have Seth, Tal, Kyrie all be wearing these yellowish like robes to inevitably be sacrificed here. So Kyrie is to make her way up there to be sacrificed. And or maybe the king did get killed for his efforts. Like that's why we don't see him here. So yeah, maybe the king did get killed. So my apologies. I kind of messed that up a little bit. So Dar makes his way through horseback to thrusting through the town to inevitably go on and thrust his way to the pyramid, running up these steps. We then have Seth, considering Dar is now here, to be like, okay, let's get to arms. Seth is to thrust away his sacrifice clothing to then have people throw him a stick and a knife, and Seth throws this stick or throws this knife uh, to Tal so they can just kind of fight off these priests here. So as Mayax is to take Kyrie and almost stab her with this dagger, here is where Dar comes in, sword in hand, to slay a number of these priests. Inevitably to go on and make his way to go up against Mayax. Oh, okay, so Mayax is to have the king on this throne, on this seat, and he is to have a dagger to him. Going on and eventually killing the king because this guy needs to have died anyways. And that's how, because I was so confused. I'm like, where's the king in here? Like, I know he gets killed off, but I'm just like, but where does this exactly happen? So here's the scene of which that happens. So Mayax is to kill the king and then be rolling around with the Beastmaster. Inevitably to go on and have Dar thrust this dagger into Mayax's chest, assuming that Mayax is to be taken out here, but that's not the case. The Beastmaster goes on, finds Kyrie, grabs her, and just kind of carries her out here. Mayax thrusts his dagger from out of his chest to eventually make his way to Dar to want to kill him. Here's where Kodo and Poto make their way up these stairs, like, hey, we're going to try and save the Beastmaster here. So Kodo goes on and notices that Dar is in jeopardy. And so Kodo jumps onto Mayax, and Mayax is to be attacked by this ferret and goes on to fall into the fire and is to now be killed here. Dar is like, wait a minute, Kodo, like, oh no, he's to sacrifice himself to save me. And we're to just be so sad. It's like, wait a minute, like we find one of the ferrets die, but then we come to find out that Poto is to have had like a litter of ferrets, so I guess that has to just make up for it, right? It doesn't really, but still. So the ferret still dies, and so we come to find out that there seems to be a threat that eventually will come. That eventually there is to be the horde of the June that is going to be a threat coming upon this town. So some people are asking if they should fight, if they should flee, and we would have Dar that turns to Tal. It's like, hey, you're the new king around here. You need to decide. And Seth is like, yeah, it's your decision now. So Tal is like, well, we should probably fight. And so Dar's like, okay, we'll fight then. So now everybody in town is preparing for this battle. And they're using the tar as a weapon against the June. So they go on and they rip away this bridge from this moat. And Seth is to tell everybody, hey, yeah, cover up the moat. Put as much dirt over the moat to have people not realize that there's tar here. So like we have to really take a long stretch of time to like, yeah, like push this bridge and cover it up and what have you and put your backs into it. So as Dar goes on and looks back on his on his metal piece that has the bird symbol on it. Darius to say, yeah, I'm probably going to need the help of those winged devourers. So, hey, Hawk, take this metal piece to call upon the winged devourers because I'm going to need them by the end of this movie. So, we now cut to the night. And we come to find that the Junes are to make their way to this gate. So as we'd come to find, of course, the Junes are running to inevitably thrust their way into this tar, not knowing any better. But some of the Junes start to make their way out of the tar to have their crossbows out and are starting to thrust their crossbows into the good guys' allies. We'd have one person that gets an arrow to the chest that is to be a guy that is kind of manning the gate. So we have a guy that has this torch that is to run out to try and flame this tar, but inevitably he gets taken down. Tal runs out himself, grabs this torch, and tries to be the torchbearer. Kyrie goes on and chases after him because, like, hey, that's my cousin. Hey, he's the future king. I have to try to protect him. And this gate ends up inevitably going down behind her, and she gets stuck. As Tal makes his way with this torch to try and get to this tar, inevitably he is to be arrowed down, but not exactly killed. We then would inevitably go on to have Kyrie that takes up the torch and thrusts it upon one of the June, to where now the June is to be lit on fire. The Beastmaster comes into frame here and boots this June to thrust him in to the tar the tar moat gap there, and all of a sudden we end up seeing this big huge massive explosion, because of course there has to just be a big huge massive explosion in any action film. We come to find that the June are to still make their way through this moat to get to Dar, because of course they do. And eventually the June start to attack Dar to the point to where Dar now jumps onto this bridge and then jumps on to one of the June that are to be on this horseback and starts to attack them and fight them. As well as also Kyrie is to try to do the same here, to try to defend themselves. As more June make their way from this gap on fire. So eventually the group here of Beastmaster, Kyrie, Tal, and I think Seth also gets into the mix here. Inevitably they get surrounded, and eventually here is where we are to then go on and have the winged devourers go on and take out all of the Junes. And this is to go on and just leave to where then Beastmaster to face off against the leader of the Junes. And while they are fighting, we even have where the June's leader's weapon is to kind of come as this like swinging device that has these like, it's a mace, but then also it has like these like axes, these sharp items at the end of it. So inevitably, like Dar takes away this guy's own weapon, stabs it into his back, has to eventually come up with ways to try to kill this June leader, and does go on and does so by kicking him and just inevitably taking him out. So Dar goes on and eventually is to be in mid battle with the Winged Devourers. And then there seems to be three Winged Devourers that look at Dar like, like, all right, like, let's let nod one at one another and realize how and allies we've all become. So strangely, also like Dar is like looking way up at these people, and it does not make sense for how like tall these people are to actually be. But anyways, so after Dar goes on and slays the June and puts down this bridge or the bridge, this gate, and then makes his way to his people, all the people are to go on and be so happy and be like, yeah, you saved us. So Dar, Seth, and Kyrie take Tal and find this home and set him on Tal to this table. And Seth rips this arrow out of this guy's chest. I'm like, holy shit. Like really you're going on and really just thrusting this arrow out? Like he's gonna die if you thrust that out so hard. So Tal is to say Beastmaster, and then we just cut to the next morning, and Dar is asking Seth, it's like, well, hey, how is Tal? And Seth is like, well, yeah, he probably won't have much use of his left arm for a while, but if anything, it seems that he'll be fine. He'll recover. And Dara's like, well, hey, like if anything, like yeah, like he'll have one really strong right hand. So as further both Seth and Dar talk here, Dar is to give Seth a gift, which is to be the caterer to take with him. And all of a sudden, Seth is to notice Dar's hand, and it's to realize the marking. Seth realizes that Dar, from the symbol on his hand, is to be a man who should be king. And Dar is like, no, like that's to be left with Tal, the guy with the strong right hand. Like he's to be the king. Like I'm happy that he's going to go on and be that, and I'm willing to walk away from this entire town to not be king. So Dar then takes Rue and walks off here. Seth makes his way to Tal and hands him the cater, and Tal is to say to Seth, oh, he's gone? So Tal runs his way to the temple to go on and whip out the gift that he is to have been given, and is to see that the hawk is to be flying off. The next thing we see is Dar, and he is to just be seemingly by his lonesome, to eventually to have somebody come from behind him, who is Kyrie. The two of them look at one another, they kiss, and eventually we come to find that Poto is to, within his sack, have baby other ferrets. And we also have a moment here where Rue and Poto are almost to kind of share this little kiss. It's kind of funny. So here's where the hawk comes flying in, watching both Dar and Kyrie kiss here, and that's what wraps up the film. There are certain avenues when I was to review this where I kind of failed at the exact details at certain moments, but I'm satisfied enough about how this is to overall be approached. So I'm fine with it. If anything, this will be uploaded. I also have to turn around and watch the day one of WrestleMania to also cover that. So I'm sure my voice by the end of this day will probably be destroyed. But I'm going to try to get through these projects quickly. I'm to try to cover a good chunk of things and hope that when I go on and I do all these things, eventually it'll be worth it at some point that I've gone on to cover so much of this stuff. Um, I'm to try as quickly as possible to cover the first day of WrestleMania as quickly as I can, but also I have other projects to also try to do as well in between that. So hopefully I'll go on and get everything that I need to done. I really don't want to go on and cover 2 days worth of WrestleMania in one video. I just want to go on and do them as separate videos, if nothing else. So if it takes me a while to cover WrestleMania Day 1, I think I'll just do 2 separate videos, if nothing else, for each one of those things. And I'll just have to see a number of hours of content all just slammed together. So that way that at least will somehow get covered. After this, I hope to go on and cover Resident Evil Extinction. I hope to cover more Power Rangers because I have shirts now for seasons that are coming up. I'm so happy that I have that now. Um, I feel so optimistic about my chances about being able to still get items that I can use for thumbnails. More so than I probably have before, even though even Timu doesn't have as much stuff as it has kind of done before as far as like costume stuff. I'm still trying to find certain things and hoping that they're going to stay in stock long enough for me to obtain them so that way I can use them here as things to use for thumbnails. So hopefully I'll go on and have these items. I'll be able to uh, do good videos, make good choices. This video will probably not be one of those, but regardless, I'm to just try to go on and just make content if nothing else. So with that said, goodbye everybody. Goodbye everybody.